Great, thank you very much. Welcome everybody to today's Accountability Board meeting. If I could ask you to go around and introduce yourselves, please. So just for the record, I'm Sarah Dance, I'm Chair of the Accountability Board.
I'm Helen Dyer, I am Capital Programme Manager at SELEP.
Roger Goff, Leader, Kent County Council.
Stephen George, Leader, Southend City Council.
Leslie Wagland, Cabinet Member at Essex for Economic and Rural Infrastructure and Planning.
Morning everyone, Simon Cook representing Further Education.
Alan Jarrett, Leader of Medway Council.
Mark Hochschild, now Acting Leader of Thurrock Council.
Keith Basin, Leader of East Sussex County Council. Michael Newman, Essex County Council, representing the Section 151 for the accountable body.
Thank you. And we have some people joining us virtually. I'd particularly like to pay a tribute to Adam, who is joining us virtually despite the fact that he has COVID. So Adam, over to you.
Thanks, Sarah. Adam Bryan, Chief Executive of the LEP.
Thank you. Stephanie.
Stephanie Ennis, I'm a solicitor with Essex Legal Services at Essex County Council.
And Rosemary, if you're there.
I am here. Hello, Rosemary Nunn, University of Greenwich, Higher Education Representative.
Thank you very much. As you know, microphones are on the table and they're switched on throughout the meeting. And if you wish to speak, if you could either catch my eye or raise your hand, that would be great. When voting, please can you raise your hand so that we can carefully record people's votes. And as you know, members of the public are able to join the meeting and officers are also listening into the conversation. And the recording of the meeting will be available by the SELEP website after the meeting has concluded. So for those people attending virtually, please don't use the chat function because we're not able to see that. If there are any technical issues, we will try to rejoin you as soon as possible, so just stay online. There are no items requiring confidential discussion, and apologies, do we have any?
Yes, we have apologies from Councillor Bentley, who is represented by Councillor Wagland, and from Councillor Chambers, who is represented by Councillor Jarrett.
Thank you very much. Okay, so let's go on to items of the last meeting. Are you happy that they are a correct record of the meeting held on the 15th of July? I was not at this meeting. Thank you very much to Simon for chairing so brilliantly. Is everybody happy?
Yep.
Thank you. Can I ask whether there are any declarations of interest, please? No? Okay. We have had 4 public questions have been received and they are all going to be addressed by Adam. So Adam, you're going to read the questions out and we'll deliver the responses. I know that you will be coughing in between, so we will bear with you. Thank you.
Thank you, Sarah. I will try and mute myself if I do enter any coughing fits, just to spare everybody the sound effects. So if I am on mute and it looks odd, then you know exactly why. But I've tried to do as much as I can to fend that off. So just a warning in advance, there are a few questions and sub-questions here. This is going to take me some time to read through. But just to emphasise that we felt it was really important to try and address all of the questions as we have done. So just bear with me as I read through them. I'll indicate which member of the public submitted the questions and then indicate the response in turn. Right, so question 1 from a Mr. Bernard Brown. On the North Bexhill Access Road project, it is acknowledged that the work required to meet the planning conditions has not yet been undertaken. Additional funding was provided for this work by SELEP. As the work has not been completed, who holds the money? Is it East Sussex County Council or has the money been paid to Sea Change Sussex? What legally binding assurances does SELEP have that these funds are securely held and are ring-fenced solely for the purposes for which they were released by Essex County Council to East Sussex County Council? Will SELEP publish such documentation with the minutes of this meeting? The response: the Local Growth Fund funding awarded to the North Bexhill Access Road project has been spent in full supporting delivery of the new road. The service level agreement in place between Essex County Council as accountable body for SELEP, South East LEP Limited, and each upper tier local authority within the SELEP area is a legal document and includes the following obligations. One, that the council, i.e. East Sussex County Council, accepts responsibility for ensuring delivery of the project and the outputs and outcomes agreed in the respective business cases. Two, the project allocation, i.e. LGF funding award, is a capped contribution per project. The council is responsible for all additional costs, for example, overspends arising from implementation of the project. The standard terms of the service level agreement can be found in the appendices pack for the 2nd of October 2020 SELEP Strategic Board meeting. So that concludes the first question. Question 2 from Mr. Steve Turner. SELEP and East Sussex County Council keep reporting that the original 2015 business case for the Queensway Gateway Road was £15 million. But they also keep neglecting to report that Sea Change Sussex officially stated to SELEP, the independent technical evaluator, and the public in November 2015 that they could deliver the Queensway Gateway Road project for £6 million. Sea Change and East Sussex County Council stated outright in public grant documents this was possible due to alternative engineering options, a redesign, and large quantities of earth being available from other projects. Page 31. As a result, SELEP declared to central government and the public that the £9 million reduction in the Queensway Gateway Road project funding was a saving and not slippage. Page 40, pages 63 and 69. As a direct result of this stated claim about Queensway Gateway Road saving, Sea Change also received an additional £9 million public money for their proposed North Bexhill Access Road project. But by February 2018, Sea Change came back to SELEP stating the Queensway Gateway Road would now cost another £6 million to complete, i.e. a 100% increase in budget. Sea Change stated they would contribute £2 million of their own funds to complete the project if SELEP provided another £4 million of public money by taking funding away from other projects in East Sussex. This was approved by SELEP. And 4.5 years later, it is now reported that the £10 million worth of public money is all spent by Sea Change. The Queensway Gateway Road is still not complete with no clear completion time frame, and SELEP has serious concerns that Sea Change is reporting that its £2 million contribution to the project is temporary. Why is SELEP reporting only partial information to the Accountability Board and public that conceals the true history of the Queensway Gateway Road funding? And why is SELEP not transparently holding Sea Change and East Sussex County Council to account for the possibly dishonest false statements they made in public grant documents that has led to this turn of events? And the response is, every decision with regard to the Queensway Gateway Road local growth funding allocation has been taken during a public meeting. An agenda pack is prepared and published for each SELEP Strategic Board and Accountability Board meeting, and these packs are all available to the public on the SELEP website, as are the minutes of the meetings. The Accountability Board provides the accountability structure for decision making and approval of funding within the overarching vision of the SELEP Strategic Board. As the Queensway Gateway Road project is flagged as being high risk, there is a requirement for East Sussex County Council to provide an update on delivery of the project at each Accountability Board meeting. That concludes the second question. The third question from Mr. Mark Jones. On the 25th of June 2014, 6th of August 2014 and 4th of September 2014, the East Sussex County Council lead member for Strategic Management and Economic Development, Councillor Keith Glazier, approved unsecured at-risk loans from East Sussex Council monies to Sea Change Sussex for £4 million, £2.6 million and £4.6 million respectively, in order for the Regeneration Company to complete its SELEP Growing Places Fund projects. The SELEP GPF projects, Growing Places Fund projects, were in jeopardy as Sea Change Sussex did not have the ability to pay its third-party building contract liabilities. In paragraph 2.6 on the 6th of August 2014, East Sussex County Council reported that Sea Change Sussex itself had stated that it was not a going concern without public front funding in advance of expenditure. Despite this identified risk as to the financial viability of Sea Change Sussex as a government grant recipient, Concurrently and thereafter, the company was promoted by East Sussex County Council for 6 more SELEP awards, equating to more than £43.9 million in public LGF grant funding. At no time when attending SELEP boards as Councillor Glazier declared these at-risk Essex County Council loans made to Sea Change Sussex as a potential conflict of interest with East Sussex County Council, discharging its devolved duties of SELEP audit and assurance to ensure the full compliance of Sea Change Sussex with all SELEP public funding conditions and regulations. East Sussex declarations of compliance were accepted by SELEP on trust and good faith without audit in order for SELEP to approve the release of government monies to East Sussex County Council, thereby enabling East Sussex County Council to recoup the value of these at-risk loans. Nor has Councillor Glazier recused himself from any SELEP funding decisions relating to Sea Change Sussex any time, despite East Sussex County Council, as a major creditor to Sea Change Sussex, having a vested interest in future SELEP financial awards to the company to ensure its ongoing solvency. East Sussex County Council has now confirmed that it has not performed the prescribed local audits of Sea Change Sussex required under the SELEP framework agreement. Instead, without the approval of SELEP, East Sussex County Council has substituted its own alternative monitoring arrangements of Sea Change Sussex. These arrangements have not been assessed or approved by the SELEP accountable body section 151 officer as sufficient to meet for principles or public financial rules. The SELEP Accountability Board has received an agenda pack that sets out collectively that under these alternative monitoring arrangements, 1, the Queensway Gateway Road project is 6 years late. The full £10 million LGF public grant allocation has been spent. This includes circa £1 million additional LGF public grant allocation approved by SELEP in February 2018 to facilitate the relocation of the car showroom required to create the roundabout connection with the A21. The Sea Change Sussex proposed alternative signalised solution negates the need for the car showroom to relocate, but there is no accompanying proposal for Sea Change Sussex to return this proportion of the LGF public grant funding to SELEP. 2, the North Bexhill Access Road project was declared as complete in April 2019, but only as a result of public challenge is now considered as not complete. The full £18.6 million of LGF public grant allocation has been spent. This includes an additional £2 million LGF public grant allocation approved by SELEP in February 2018 for extensive landscape planting works to ensure ecology and biodiversity protections. The extensive landscape planting works have not yet been delivered. Natural England are investigating potential breaches to protected species licenses. 3, the East Sussex Strategic Growth Project was reported as complete in March 2021, but only as a result of public challenge is now considered as not complete. The full £8.2 million LGF public grant allocation has been spent. 4, the Bexhill Enterprise Park North project has been reported as complete in July 2022. The full £1.94 million LGF public grant allocation has been spent. The approved business case requires a substantial Sea Change Sussex developer contribution to deliver the evaluated value for money benefits and outcomes. There are no current completion forecasts for any of these projects from Sea Change Sussex. There is SELEP accountable body urgent concern about the availability of the Sea Change Sussex £2 million developer contribution or any additional funding required to complete the Queensway Gateway Road project. This serious concern must therefore be extended to the completion of the other 3 incomplete but fully spent SELEP LGF projects. For its GPF projects, Growing Places Fund projects, Sea Change Sussex and East Sussex County Council also misreported to SELEP the potential number of workers that could be accommodated by new office space as actual new jobs created. In the public interest, considering the undeclared conflicts of interest and obvious failings of devolved due diligence, local audit and assurance duties within East Sussex, will the SELEP Accountability Board now invoke the provisions of the SELEP Framework Agreement and instruct an independent external audit of all Sea Change Sussex projects? The response: a deep dive focused on a number of the Sea Change Sussex Local Growth Fund projects is currently being undertaken by the Department for Levelling Up Housing and Communities. In addition, SELEP intend to undertake an audit of projects which have received funding through the SELEP Capital Programme. This audit will extend across all SELEP capital funding streams and will involve all local partner authorities. If the deep dive and or the audit identify any areas of concern, the SELEP Accountability Board will be asked to agree the actions that should be taken to address the points raised. So question 4. So we have received 4 questions from Sea Change Sussex. And as I have done with previous questions, I'll read the question and then I'll go to the answer, and then I'll go back to question 2, go back to question 3, go back to question 4, and do them in order of question, answer, question, answer, question, answer. So the first question, in regard, this to be clear is from Sea Change Sussex. In regards to the Queensway Gateway Road, could the SELEP Accountability Board please advise where the funding of £5 million for a £15 million scheme has gone and why the scheme was not funded through to completion? The response to that question: in March 2015, the SELEP Strategic Board agreed the award of £15 million of local growth funding to the Queensway Gateway Road project. Subsequently, in November 2015, following an update from East Sussex County Council, the Accountability Board were advised that the Queensway Gateway Road project could be delivered for £6 million rather than £15 million. The initial reallocation and reprofiling of funding was addressed at the Team East Sussex meeting held on the 2nd of November 2015 and was then considered at the East Sussex County Council lead member meeting held on the 3rd of November 2015, where the changes were agreed subject to approval from the SELEP Accountability Board. As a result, the Accountability Board papers for the meeting on the 12th of February 2016 made reference to the updated funding allocation of £6 million for the Queensway Gateway Road project across the 2015-16 and 2016-17 financial years. As a consequence, £9 million was removed from the Queensway Gateway Road project and reallocated to support the delivery of the North Bexhill Access Road project. This increased the local growth fund allocation awarded to the North Bexhill Access Road project from £7.6 million to £16.6 million. In February 2018, following receipt of a project change request from East Sussex County Council, the Accountability Board agreed the reallocation of £4 million of local growth fund funding from the A22/A27 junction improvements projects, which is £1 million, and the Hastings and Bexhill movement and access package, which was £3 million, to the Queensway Gateway Road project, bringing the total local growth fund allocation to £10 million. Question 2 and question 3, I'll read both of them now. We've got a joint answer to both questions. So question 2, in regard to the Queensway Gateway Road, could the SELEP Accountability Board please advise what procedure is in place to correct material inaccuracies of reporting to SELEP on unsupported advice that the Queensway Gateway Road scheme had an alternative design and new building costs, where no such design and no such new costs existed within the knowledge freely shared by the scheme promoter Sea Change Sussex with the federated body? And question 3, with regard to the Queensway Gateway Road, could the SELEP Accountability Board please advise what procedures are in place to ensure factually correct representations are made on behalf of Sea Change Sussex, the scheme promoter, and that the scheme promoter is made fully aware of the project change request system and its implications for the Queensway Gateway Road project for which Sea Change Sussex is the scheme promoter? So the combined response to those 2 questions: there is a service level agreement in place between Essex County Council and as accountable body for SELEP, South East SELEP Limited, and each upper tier local authority within the SELEP area. This agreement sets out the obligations of the council, i.e. East Sussex County Council, with regard to the reporting and monitoring and evaluation requirements for all projects and the management of changes to projects in the Local Growth Fund programme. The process for managing changes to projects is further explained in the SELEP Assurance Framework. The assurance framework indicates that the project change should be agreed by the local delivery partners' processes prior to submission to SELEP. This includes a review of the change request by finance officers and a senior responsible officer within the partner authority, i.e. East Sussex County Council. The service level agreement places responsibility on the council to provide regular reports to the accountable body and SELEP Secretariat in the timescales and format specified by the SELEP Secretariat to enable quarterly reporting to the Accountability Board and to government. The service level agreement requires that a back-to-back agreement is put in place between the council and any third-party delivery organisations. This back-to-back agreement must set out the relevant rights and obligations imposed on the council under the service level agreement. Under the terms of the service level agreement, East Sussex County Council is responsible for delivery of the local growth fund projects in East Sussex and is required to comply with the terms of the agreement and the SELEP assurance framework. There is an expectation that the contents of the reporting, including update reports for the Accountability Board and any project change requests submitted by the Council, will have been considered by any third-party delivery organisations prior to submission to SELEP. And question 4, if we can just get to the right page, bear with me a second. In regard to the Queensway Gateway Road, can SELEP please advise why opportunities were missed to restore the £5 million balance of the £15 million funding to allow the scheme to be completed when such funds remained available? And the answer to question 4, open calls for projects seeking local growth fund funding were issued in 2016 and 2018. In both cases, the first stage of the process was undertaken by the 4 SELEP federated boards, including Team East Sussex, and involved local prioritisation of the funding applications received. Applications prioritised by federated boards progressed through the process and were ultimately considered by the SELEP investment panel or strategic board. It is noted that an expression of interest in relation to the Queensway Gateway Road project was submitted in 2018, seeking further local growth fund investment of £3 million. This £3 million was in part to replace the £2 million Sea Change Sussex commitment to the overall £12 million project budget, with an additional £1 million to provide contingency to deliver the project for a total cost of £13 million. The expression of interest was considered alongside all other applications for funding to support projects in East Sussex, but was not prioritised sufficiently highly by the Team East Sussex board to progress to the SELEP managed stage of the process. That concludes the public questions. Sarah, thank you.
Thank you very much, Adam, and well done for managing not to come through it. Thank you. Councillor Jarrett.
Thank you, Chairman. Could I just draw the board's attention to agenda item 4 and the contents of it, which we've strayed away from substantially, haven't we? Which allows for 15 minutes for public questions and no questions for more than 3 minutes. So it might be worth noting for a future occasion, Chairman.
Thank you. Thank you. Officers, I'll ask officers to note that, please. Thank you very much. Are there any other queries or comments? No, thank you. Okay, I just want, before we go on to item 5, I'd like to note that we received items 8 and item 10 rather late in the day due to various issues. I am happy for us to proceed to examine those items, but I did just want to check with members that you were happy to do that and that you would have time to consider those items properly.
Yeah.
You're happy. Yeah, you're happy to proceed. Great. Okay. Thank you. Let's get on now with item 5 then. Helen, Getting Building Fund Capital Programme updates.
Thank you. So this report provides the usual update on the Getting Building Fund programme, including an update on those projects which have received approval for retention GBF funding beyond March 2022, an update on the GBF spend position, and on the high-risk projects. The report sets out the 21-22 year-end position, with total GBF spend of £50.666 million reported. This reflects a reduction of £20.7 million compared to the spend forecast provided at the start of 21-22. However, it should be noted that the forecast does not reflect any decisions taken by the board during the course of the year, and was based on the assumption that the GBF funding would be spent in full by the 31st of March 2022. As has previously been reported, projects have also been delayed as a result of ongoing COVID-19 and Brexit impacts, including increases in materials costs and extended lead-in times for some materials and equipment. So as the board are aware, there is already £2.5275 million GBF available for reallocation to alternative projects, following the removal of the Riding Sunbeams project. As detailed in the report, it is recommended that the Langdon Place project is also removed from the GBF programme. This project received 790,000 GBF in March 2021, but has been subject to a number of delays, as has previously been reported to the board. The GBF funding was due to be used to deliver the finishing touches to a large regeneration project, but the delivery partner has now confirmed that due to the delays experienced, they'll be unable to spend the GBF funding in accordance with the required timescales. Subject to the agreement to remove the Langdon Place project from the programme, this will increase the GBF funding available for reallocation to 3.3175 million. As detailed at previous meetings, a new GBF project pipeline needs to be developed to facilitate the reallocation of this funding, and work to create the pipeline is underway. The deadline for submitting applications for additional GBF funding was the 26th of August, and a total of 16 applications were received, seeking total GBF investment of 7.8 million. Federated boards are in the process of undertaking a local prioritisation exercise, the outcome of which will feed into the development of a draft to SELEP-wide prioritised pipeline, which will be presented to the strategic board on the 21st of October. Assuming agreement on the pipeline is reached to the strategic board, it is intended that the funding decisions will be taken at the next accountability board meeting. So the report and the appendices provide an update on all projects which have received approval for retention of their GBF funding allocation beyond March 22. The majority of these projects appear to be progressing, although 7 projects are seeking approval for retention of their GBF funding allocations beyond September. This is due to delays in delivery. These extension requests are considered under the next agenda item. At previous meetings, concerns have been raised regarding the ongoing delivery of the Better Queensway project, following complications which have arisen in relation to Swan Housing Association, who have entered into a joint venture with Southend-on-Sea City Council to deliver the project. At the last meeting, it was indicated that written assurances regarding the ongoing delivery of the project had been received from the Southend-on-Sea City Council Section 151 officer, but that there had been insufficient time for SELEP and the accountable body to review the letter prior to the board meeting. Southend-on-Sea have indicated that the proposed partnership between Swan Housing and Orbit is progressing, and it is expected that it will formally complete on the 1st of October. Whilst Orbit are continuing to undertake all the required due diligence with regard to the project, there is an indication that Orbit are keen for the project to continue once the partnership has been completed, as they appear to be preparing to take on all of Swan's obligations with regard to the project. In the meantime, work has been continuing on the project, with some early enabling works due to be funded through the GBF being commissioned, including utilities diversions and demolition of the footbridge. However, it should be noted that the project has sought approval for retention of the GBF funding beyond September. So based on the information provided, it is now considered that sufficient assurance has been provided as to the ongoing delivery of the wider Better Queensway project. There do remain areas of uncertainty which cannot be fully addressed until the partnership between Orbit and Swan Housing has been completed, and therefore the project will continue to be closely monitored as the legalities are finalised. And finally, just to quickly touch on the GBF programme-wide risks. Risks impacting on project delivery have already been mentioned, but there is also a risk regarding submission of the required reporting on the GBF programme by local partners. As referenced at the last meeting, there have been some issues with obtaining required reporting in a timely manner, and there is concern that once GBF funding has been framed, there will be less of an incentive to prioritise the completion of the reporting. As it stands, the position has improved since the last board meeting. However, if reporting is not received on time, or indeed at all, it impacts on the ability of SELEP and the accountable body to report to this board and to provide the required assurances to central government with regard to the spend of the GBF funding and the realisation of forecast project benefits. This risk will continue to be closely monitored.
Thank you, Helen. Any comments or queries from the presenters? Simon.
Just one small minor thing. In one of the recommendations for Langdon Place, we've specified within 4 weeks. I might have missed what was in there. We've never specified an amount of time. Usually it's Thank you. Okay.
And that one should be simple because it's being held by Essex County Council anyway. So
Great. Thank you. Brilliant. Thank you very much.
It's a very simple thing in this case.
Good. Thank you for clarifying.
Thank you. All right, okay, so we're asked to note the total spend on project delivery in 2021-22 of 50.666 million GBF as set out in table 1 of the report. We're asked to note the current reported spend across the GBF programme for the 2022-23 financial year of 20.784 million as set out in table 2. We were also asked whether we agree to the removal of the Langdon Place project for the GBF programme, the 790,000 GBF issued to Essex County Council should be returned to the accountable body of SELEP within 4 weeks of this board meeting for reallocation to alternative projects. Do we agree to that?
Agreed.
We are asked to note that sufficient assurance has been provided by Southend-on-Sea City Council that the West Queensway project will proceed as planned, following the regulator for social housing's decision to downgrade Swan Housing's viability and governance grades and Swan's proposed partnership with Orbit. Should the project not proceed as planned and in accordance with the approved business case, the GBF funding will need to be repaid by Southend-on-Sea City Council in accordance with the terms of the service level agreement in place between SELEP Limited, Essex County Council, and the accountable body for SELEP and Southend-on-Sea City Council. And we're asked to note the deliverability and risk assessment as set out in Appendix C. Thank you. Item 6, Helen.
Thank you. So this report sets out requests from 8 projects to retain their GBF funding allocations beyond September 2022. 7 of these projects have previously received approval for retention of their funding allocation beyond March 22, but the 8th project, Food Street, has not previously been considered by the board. The 8 projects considered in the report are UTC Maritime and Sustainable Technology Hub, Pendring Bikes and Cycle Infrastructure, Swan Modular Housing Factory, Jovix Market and Commercial Space, Romney Marsh Employment Hub, Better Queensway, No Centre South Essex and Food Street. In line with government expectations, the maximum extension available is until the 31st of March 2023. Any projects which are granted extensions will be closely monitored to ensure that this deadline is met. These extension requests have been assessed against the requirements agreed by the board in May 2022, which need to be met by all projects forecasting GBF spend beyond March 2022. The reasons for each of the extension requests are set out in the report and include extended response times for utility companies, extended lead-in times for construction materials and some equipment, and the discovery of asbestos and unexpected ground obstructions during construction. I'm not planning on going through the projects in detail, but I just wanted to pick up on a couple of points where the requirements agreed by the board may not have been fully met. Firstly, on the Swan Modular Housing Factory project, it is noted that the steel transport frames remain subject to tender. It is expected that all orders will be placed by the end of December 2022, but this does mean that contractual commitments for the transport frames will not be in place by the 30th of September 2022 as required by the board. The delay in progressing a tender process for the steel transport frames, in conjunction with an identified global shortage of steel and expected long lead-in times, does increase the risk that GBF funding will not be spent in full by the 31st of March 2023. In addition, the scope of works required to rectify the issues with the concrete floor is not yet known, although it should be noted that the requested extension is based on the worst case scenario, which would require the floor to be relayed. The next project is the Romney Marsh Employment Hub project. The works are expected to be predominantly complete by the end of this month. However, it is noted that in the report that it wasn't possible to secure the required utilities approvals in advance of the 15th of July 2022 deadline. This was due to utility companies taking significantly longer than expected to issue approval. Designs were submitted in late May, but final approval was not granted until the 12th of August. This in turn delayed the ordering of the switchgear needed to turn on the electricity at the site. Whilst acknowledging that the requirement agreed by the board was not met, the risk has been mitigated as the approvals are now in place and the project is nearing completion. A robust programme has been provided which demonstrates the spend of the GBF funding can still be achieved prior to March 23. Moving on to Better Queensway. So as discussed under the last agenda item, assurance has been provided regarding the ongoing delivery of a wider project, and the GBF funded enabling works are progressing. However, it is understood that project costs have increased since the business case was approved by the board. At this stage, it is unclear whether this increase in cost will be met through public or private sector funding. At the time of the GBF funding award, the VCR for the project was reported to be 3-to-1, based on consideration of all public sector funding secured to support project delivery. It should be noted that an increase in project benefits of an additional 93 new homes has been reported, which will partially offset the impact of any cost increase on the BCR. Given the lack of information currently available with regard to the scale of the cost increase, to which element of the wider project it applies, and as to how this cost increase will be funded, it's not currently possible to confirm that the project still offers high value for money. However, it should be noted that the project is also in receipt of £15 million from central government through the Housing Infrastructure Fund, and is therefore subject to value for money obligations outlined by government. The final project to pick up on is known as NT South Essex. Due to the nature of the project, the responsibility for securing planning consent and appointing contractors sits with the loan recipients rather than Southend-on-Sea City Council. For applicants to be eligible for the No Use Empty scheme, all planning permissions must be in place and 2 quotes of the required works must be provided with the loan application. So there are 2 options available to the board for each project. Option 1 allows the projects to retain their GBF funding allocations beyond September for a maximum period of 6 months of 31st of March. This option allows the projects to continue to deliver and should ensure that the forecast project benefits are realised. However, should any projects fail to spend their full GBF funding allocation by the 31st of March, this would represent a significant reputational risk both for SELEP and the upper-tier local authority responsible for project delivery. Failure of a local partner to meet the requirements of GBF funding may weaken their case to secure future funding from alternative government funding streams. Option 2 does not allow the projects to retain their GBF funding allocations beyond September and requires the return of the GBF funding which remains unspent until the 30th of September 2022. Any projects which are refused a further extension will not be eligible for receipt of any additional GBF funding and will therefore not be included in the emerging GBF prioritised project pipeline. Under option 2, a further review of each project will need to be conducted to determine whether there is a requirement for any of the remaining GBF funding to also be returned to the accountable body for reallocation. This review will focus on whether the projects continue to meet the requirements of the SELEP assurance framework and the service level agreement. Should it be determined that any further funding needs to be returned, this will be subject to a decision at the November meeting.
Thank you, Helen. Any questions?
Can I just check on the state of the street project? Because clearly the clear evidence that it meets the criteria. I mean, so is that contained within the option 1?
Yes, so yes, I've only picked up on the projects where there were concerns around their compliance with the conditions. So yes, Food Street meets the requirement.
Excellent, thank you.
Simon.
A couple of questions, both related to the Swan Housing project. You mentioned that was outside some of the things that were previously agreed because of procurement. Could you just go into a bit more detail if you do know what that is? Is that they've been unable to secure quotes? Because that would be for me a reasonable delay. Or is that they haven't actually gone out to procurement yet? Because there's quite an important differentiation between the two for me. If you know the answer to that question.
I don't know that level of detail. I'm afraid I've just been made aware that they have not yet been procured, but will be by the end of the year.
Okay. If you would be able to find out, I think that's really helpful for us to know. Because delays in procurement would be as a direct consequence of some of the other exceptions that we've made in getting the return of quotes. I think that would be a reasonable reason. And the second thing, is there any impact on the Swan Housing of the issues that we've picked up previously with their governance and merger with Orbit Homes? And does that then have another impact perhaps that we may not know of in this particular project later on?
I don't believe so, no. I believe this factory does form a key part of their plans moving forward post merger with Orbit. So I don't think this project is affected in any way.
Okay, so we've not been made aware of any risks that project may be delayed as a result of any merger.
No, this project has been progressing while the merger has been moving forward.
Thank you. Thanks very much.
Through you, Chair, I think you'll find that whilst we're calling it a merger, it's more of a takeover by Orbit, and Orbit have financial strength, and therefore that's why we're confident the project will proceed.
Thank you. Councillor Jarrett.
Thank you. I think as a general point, the end of March next year, not far away, is it? I just wonder how tightly risks are going to be monitored, because we all know the world we're in at the moment with difficulties in supply, procurement, supply of materials and labour, and associated substantial cost precious. I just wonder how tightly all projects will be managed going forward, because I get absolutely the reputational risk if they're not delivered on time, but we all want delivery, don't we, at the end of the day?
So we will continue to monitor these areas, and update reports will be brought to every board meeting. Should it appear that any of the projects are unable to meet the conditions and will go beyond March, that would obviously be subject to a decision by this board as to whether they want to take any action to remove funding, or if you want to allow the project to progress and face the reputational impacts moving forward. But we will continue to bring updates to every board meeting, just so the board are fully appraised of the position.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And am I right in thinking that I think all of these envisage a November report, which I imagine is dovetailed to the November board meeting?
Yes, that's right.
Councillor Scott.
Yeah, I just say I think that something applies. I mean, obviously the one which we have the big interest in is Romney Marsh. And again, the recommendation is it not that there should be further updates just to ensure that that is being delivered. But clearly, one of the major concerns, which was the DNO, came through between the time that was supposed to be the deadline and this meeting. It was in August, and the switchgear. I think we'd be able to spend the money anyway by December. So the switchgear isn't a question of the timing of that delivery. So. But it's absolutely right that for all of these, for the reasons Alan said, that we do have updates to ensure that they're being delivered. But it seems to me in this case, and indeed in the others set out, that there's a fairly clear pathway, albeit subject to some of the risks that we've described.
Okay. Thank you. Simon.
So just one more question then. So I guess, are we establishing a normal principle that we would rather, I've got to think of the right word this the right way. We would rather continue to support projects that are delayed as a result of the consequences we've agreed than reallocate that money, because that's a very simple point of principle that's very specific to the current economic times that we're facing.
Yes,
As a principle.
I think we face similar issues because obviously all the projects that are ongoing are delayed. In fact, they're still ongoing. The only other option would be to reallocate it to new projects or further phases of the existing projects, but obviously they're still subject to the same risks. So I think it's trying to balance whether it's better to safeguard the benefits that we've already reported to government that we're going to achieve, or whether it's better to try and bring forward some different benefits. I think as long as the existing projects would be delivered, it would probably be less of a risk to continue to progress with those projects, unless of course there was any showstopper risks, in which case I might need to seek a stronger decision from the board. But I think all the while the projects are progressing, that seems to be most sensible.
Well, if it helps, I think if we had something very specific perhaps at our next meeting, because although we're going to get regular updates on these reports, I think establishing that point of principle and whether or not there's any evidence that the team might be able to pull together, because there will be obvious inherent risks in just reallocating that money to other projects that will have exactly the same problems.
Yeah.
Although there might also be one or two in there that may not have the same problems that could be finished. I think if that's sort of a point of principle for us to be assured, because I think the juxtaposition is that many parts of government won't be that tolerant. We're being quite tolerant, so it just helps protect us, I think, from any reputational consequence further down the road when it's going to be a continual extension for a few months, I think. If I've made any sense of that talk, yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, Councillor Wagner.
I think it's an interesting fine balance on reputation, I might add, because I think you have to look at that both ways. I think you could find yourself with a reputational disadvantage from cutting off at this point for exactly the reasons that have been identified around the table. If it's simply going to mean that you have to start fresh and the new project is faced with exactly the same challenges, but is starting afresh, so those may be greater. My concern is that we shouldn't establish a principle about this. I think this is very fact sensitive, and I think the public would expect it to be fact sensitive. That said, I think there are commonalities which we've just identified about some of the risks. So I agree with you that we are more likely to reach a common decision where those commonalities apply. That isn't too pedantic.
No, thank you. Okay, so I think that there is a fine line there. It seems to me that actually we need to absolutely, which I know you weren't suggesting do anything other than that, continue to report really carefully, Simon, on all of these projects. I think there is a very fine, my view is with Councillor Wagner, there's a very fine line here. So I think we continue as we are, but we're continuing with the knowledge of what we've just spoken about as well. And, you know, that will be minuted and we can come back on that. Okay, so I'm going to go with option 1 first and have your votes on that. We have to take each project one by one. Do you agree that UTC Maritime and Sustainable Technology Hub meets the requirements previously agreed by the board for all projects retaining their respective GBF funding allocation beyond 31st of March 2022? Agree that the GBF funding allocation can be retained against the project for a further maximum period of 6 months to the 31st of March 2023, subject to strategic board endorsement in October 2022. Okay. Do you agree that tendering bikes and cycle infrastructure meets the requirements previously agreed by the board for all projects retaining their respective GBF funding allocations beyond the 31st of March 2022? And agree that the GBF funding allocation can be retained against the project for a further maximum period of 6 months to the 31st of March 2023, subject to strategic board endorsement in October 2022. Do you agree that the Swan modular housing factory meets requirements previously agreed by the board for all projects retaining their respective GBF funding allocations beyond the 31st of March 2022? Agree that the GBF funding allocation can be retained against the project for a further maximum period of 6 months to the 31st of March 2023, subject to strategic board endorsement in October 2022. Do you agree that the JWIC market and commercial space meets the requirements previously agreed by the board for all projects retaining their respective GBF funding allocations beyond the 31st of March 2022? Agree that the GBF funding allocation can be retained against the project for a further maximum period of 6 months to the 31st of March 2023, subject to strategic board endorsement in October 2022. Thank you. Do you agree that Romney Marsh Employment Hub meets the requirements previously agreed by the board for all projects retaining the respective GBF funding allocation beyond 31st of March 2022? Agree that the GBF funding allocation can be retained against the project for a further maximum period of 6 months to 31st of March 2023, subject to strategic board endorsement in October 2022. Do you agree that Better Queensway meets the requirements previously agreed by the board for all projects retaining their respective GBF funding allocation beyond 31st of March 2022? And agree that the GBF funding allocation can be retained against the project for a further maximum period of 6 months to the 31st of March 2023, subject to strategic board endorsement in October 2022. And finally, agree that no use empty South Essex meets the requirements previously agreed by the board for all projects retaining their respective GBF funding allocations beyond the 31st of March 2022. And agree that the GBF funding allocation can be retained against the project for a further maximum period of 6 months to the 31st of March 2023, subject to strategic board endorsement in October 2022. And then for Food Street project, do you agree that the project meets the requirements previously agreed by the board for all projects retaining the respective GBF funding allocations beyond the 31st of March 2022? And agree that the GBF funding allocation can be retained against the project for a maximum period of 12 months to the 31st of March 2023, subject to strategic board endorsement in October 2022. Thank you very much. Thank you for bearing with me whilst we went through that one by one. Okay, item 7. Helen, again.
Thank you. So Sorry, just before I move on to that, I've been given an answer to the question around the Swan Modular Housing Factory procurement. They have already gone out to procurement before, but initial attempts aren't able to meet the deadlines for the GBF. So they are re-procuring in an attempt to meet those deadlines. So
Fantastic. That provides assurance. Thank you.
Good. Thank you very much, and thank you to whoever responded to that so quickly. Thank you.
Next item is the local growth fund programme update. This report provides the usual update on the LGF programme, including updated risk assessment for all projects. The report sets out the 21-22 year end position, total LGF spend of 45.24 million, including DFT retained schemes reported. This reflects a reduction of 38.46 million compared to the spend forecast provided at the start of 21-22. Whilst this reduction is primarily due to ongoing COVID-19 and Brexit impacts on delivery, there are a number of other points to raise in relation to table 1. The thorough outturn figures show a reduction in spend of 89.7% against the forecast. This is due to the forecast assuming full spend of the remaining Grace South LGF funding allocation within 21-22. However, as the board will recall, an extended spend profile was presented in May 2022, which now takes LGF spend into 23-24 and beyond, meaning that spend in 21-22 was significantly reduced. The DFT retained schemes outturn figure show a reduction of 82.7% against the forecast. This is due to the forecast assuming full spend of the remaining 13.5 million LGF allocated to the A127 Fairland Junction Improvements project. As set out in the report, this business case is still awaiting sign off from DFT, and therefore the funding was not spent in 21-22 as expected. So moving on, as the board are aware, approval is needed for all projects seeking to spend their LGF allocation beyond the 30th September 2021. It was expected that no further projects would come forward for approval. However, at this meeting, the board are asked to consider whether the I3 Innovation Investment Loan Scheme project can spend its LGF allocation beyond September 21. The majority of the 6 million LGF allocation ordered to the project has been allocated to projects as set on the business case. However, 0.356 million remains unspent. As set out in the report, an application for the remaining balance was received and progressed through the full application process, including 2 internal assessments, trading standards checks, commissioning of an external appraisal report, approval at the investment advisory board, contract negotiations, drafting for required legal documents, and issuing of the final documents to the applicant for signature. It was only at this stage, following numerous attempts by Kent County Council to secure a return of the legal documents, that the applicant declined the loan. This whole process took over 9 months and has therefore resulted in delays to completion of the project. Kent County Council have taken steps to engage with other potential applicants. The new application is now working through the approvals process. If everything goes smoothly, it is expected that the funding will be released in March 2023. There are a number of programme-wide risks which continue to be monitored, including significant cost increases and extended lead-in times for some construction materials and equipment. These are impacting on the LGF projects which remain in delivery. The other main risks include the impact of the COVID-19 pandemic on the realisation and pace of realisation of project outcomes. Work is ongoing to understand the full impact on the project outcomes, and if required, revised forecast outcomes from the LGF programme will be brought forward for board consideration. Alongside this risk, there is a risk that the benefits will be realised but not measured or reported to SELEP and the board. There are a large number of post-scheme completion evaluation reports outstanding, mainly due to resourcing issues experienced by local partners, which mean that it is not possible to give the board or central government an accurate indication as to what has been achieved as a result of the LGF programme. Finally, as mentioned under the GBF update report, there is a risk that now the LGF funding has been fully defrayed to local partners, that completion of the required quarterly reporting will not be prioritised. This has implications for the robustness of the updates on the programme that can be provided to both the board and central government.
Thank you. Any comments or queries? Helen, I have a query about that last point that you just raised about the possibility of, well, it's a question in the statement, possibility of not getting our reports. I absolutely, first of all, recognise the pressure that our local authority officers are all under, but I would, this is my statement, is that I would really request that the reporting still does come through and in a timely manner. The other question is about the impact on us as an accountability board and on indeed on SELEP Limited if this reporting and we're not able to report up to government in the appropriate way.
Yes, so there is an ongoing obligation for me to report to government on a regular basis, including reporting on the benefits that have been achieved as a result of the LGF programme. Whilst I'm not sure there are necessarily any direct implications, at the outset of the LGF programme, we did commit to delivering a certain number of jobs and homes and various other benefits. And government have those figures, obviously, and if there is currently a very significant difference between what we said we would achieve through the programme and what we've actually reported today. I appreciate that some of the projects are still ongoing, so we wouldn't have realised that, and realisation of benefits has been significantly impacted by COVID and in some cases by Brexit. But I think it's just managing, again, I think it's a potential reputational risk that we've missed to realising benefits that we may have realised, but without the reporting and the post-scheme completion, I don't know about the benefits, so government don't know about them. So I think it's a reputational risk again.
Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you. Does that mean there's a dislocation in reporting?
Sorry?
Does that mean there's a dislocation in reporting? You're not getting timely reporting. That's what the chairman said, we should continue with timely reporting, which is
Yes.
only logical, isn't it? Is
Yeah.
that happening or is that not happening?
It's been a little hit and miss in some areas. It means mostly now up to date, I think. I think I've now got all the reporting. There's just a few section 151 signatures outstanding. I think the biggest issue we currently have is the post-scheme completion monitoring and evaluation, which is a bit of a longer document that covers lessons learned and kind of gives us updated programs and updates on benefits realised to date. I think that's where we are most struggling at the moment, which I appreciate is more resource intensive, which is why local areas are struggling to produce those documents. We are actively working with local partners to try and bring that forward and are happy to have meetings if there are certain aspects of those documents which people are struggling with. We will provide support where possible.
Thank you. So,
Just going to support as another voice really your statement just now, because I think you've, as an officer, you've flagged it twice in your feedback for 2 reports so far. The last meeting we had 2 delayed reports that meant that we couldn't make decisions, and I know at least one of those come back into today's, thankfully. So I think that the timeliness of reporting as an officer to discharge your duties on behalf of us is important. So just to know that in the minutes again, support your statement.
thank you, Sam. Okay, great, thank you. Okay, so we're asked to note the total spend on project delivery in 2021-22 of 42.35 million LGF, excluding the Department for Transport retained schemes, and 45.24 million, including DFT retained schemes as set out in table 1 of the report. We're asked whether you agree the updated total planned LGF spend on project delivery in 22-23 of 24.368 million, excluding DFT retained schemes, and increasing to 24.692 million, including DFT retained schemes, as set out in table 3 and appendix A of the report. Do you agree the reported LGF spend on project delivery in Q1 22-23 of 4.767 million, as set out in table 2 and appendix A? We're asked to note the deliverability and risk assessment as set out in appendix D. And you're asked whether you agree the spend of LGF beyond 30th September 2021 and the revised completion date for the I3 Innovation Investment Loan Scheme, formerly referred to as Kenton Medway Growth Hub project, set out in section 7 of this report, subject to strategic board endorsement in October 2022. Thank you very much. Okay, now we are going on to item 8, Howard. Sweet.
Thank you, Chair.
So this report provides an update on the delivery of the London Gateway Stanley Hope project. It also provides an update on the revised business case submitted in relation to the project and the outcome of the independent technical evaluator review. The board are asked to consider whether the project continues to meet the requirements of the SELEP assurance framework and to decide whether the local growth fund should remain allocated to the project. The report provides details as to the planned improvements and gives an update on project delivery alongside information on risks to project delivery and the status of the updated business case. I'm going to focus on the risks to project delivery, the business case, and the options which are presented in the report. Phase 1 of the project, the delivery of the new station building, is reasonably well advanced, and a procurement process has been undertaken to appoint a contractor to deliver the works. Volker Fitzpatrick were appointed in March 2022, and the board were advised at the last meeting that it was expected that the construction contract would be signed in late July or early August. However, the contract has not yet been signed, and discussions are ongoing to address concerns related to potential scope change and rail possessions availability. The ongoing delays to the signing of the construction contract present a risk of project delivery and may adversely impact on the construction programme. Should Volker Fitzpatrick decide to withdraw from the project, Thurrock Council may need to reprocure, which could expose them to increased costs given the rising material costs, supply chain delays, labour shortages and high inflation levels. Whilst contract negotiations continue, initial work are being undertaken under a letter of intent. However, the letter of intent has now expired and it needs to be extended. Phase 2 of the project, the delivery of the multi-mode transport interchange, is at a much earlier stage of development. A decision has recently been taken by Thurrock Council to return to the option development stage of this part of the project. This decision has been taken to try and ensure that forecast project benefits are realised. However, the fact that phase 2 is at an early stage of development does present a number of risks, including uncertainty as to how the forecast project benefits will be realised, as they are heavily dependent upon phase 2, a risk to the funding package, provision of 0.55 million of section 106 funding from DP World is dependent upon an acceptable design being developed, an ability to confirm if a full funding package is in place to deliver all phases of the project as the costs associated with phase 2 are currently unknown. Should additional funding be required to support delivery of the project, this funding will need to be secured and may impact on the overall BCR by the project. In November 2021, the board agreed that in light of increased total project costs, a revised business case should be brought forward to demonstrate that the project continues to offer high value for money and to reconfirm the expected project benefits. This revision to the business case was also requested in response to an extension request from Thurrock Council. It was originally agreed that the business case should be submitted for consideration at the May 2022 board meeting. However, the board agreed an extension to this meeting due to delays progressing this work. The business case has been reviewed by the independent technical evaluator, and whilst the business case indicates that the benefit cost ratio for the project is 4.9 to 1, due to major uncertainties around the benefit cost analysis and other issues, the value for money categorisation cannot be assured by the ITE. The significant uncertainties are around uncertainty as to whether SELEP investment is needed for the benefits to materialise, with further information required to explain the dependency of the jobs on the proposed works and the ability of the project to generate stated benefits. A lack of consideration of inflation, which is a significant concern given the current high inflation levels, inadequate information on costs and funding spent to date, and non-compliant treatment of some costs. Due to these uncertainties, the ITE is unable to provide the required assurance that the project continues to offer high value for money, and as a consequence, it cannot be confirmed that the project complies with the requirements of section V 3.2 of the SELEP assurance framework. Section V 3.2 of the assurance framework sets out the requirements that projects should meet in order to receive a recommendation for approval. These requirements include consideration of deliverability and risk, alongside appropriate mitigating measures and a benefit to cost ratio of at least 2 to 1. In light of the outcome of the ITE review of the revised business case and the risks to project delivery outlined in the report, 2 options are provided for the board consideration at this meeting.
Option 1 seeks the removal of the project from the LGF programme and the return of 7.5 million LGF funding from Thurrock Council. This option has been included as it is not currently possible to confirm that the project meets the requirements of the SELEP assurance framework. It is acknowledged that the LGF funding has been spent in full and the removal of the funding will present a financial challenge for Thurrock Council. It is acknowledged that the project continues to be strategically important for the local area and for the impacted employment sites, particularly in the context of the new Thames freeport. Without delivery of the project, it is unclear how the sustainable travel targets set out within the agreed travel plans for DP World and Thames Enterprise Park will be realised. If the board agrees to option 1, the funding will need to be returned to Essex County Council as the accountable body for SELEP within 4 weeks of this board meeting. Option 2 provides Thurrock with one final opportunity to address and mitigate the identified risks to the project delivery and to undertake work to strengthen the project business case. It will also allow time for phase 2 to be developed, enabling Thurrock Council to confirm that a full funding package is in place for the full scope of the project. So as to allow sufficient time for the concerns raised in the report to be addressed, it is proposed that an updated business case be brought to the first board meeting of 2023-24, likely to be June 2023. It is recommended that if the points are not adequately addressed by the June 2023 meeting, that the funding will be removed from the project and no further decisions will be required from the board. 2 reviews of the revised business case have been undertaken by the ITE to date, and these have been funded by SELEP Limited. However, given that the limited financial resources available to SELEP at the current time, it is recommended that the cost of any further ITE reviews of the business case are covered by Thurrock Council. Finally, given the current status of phase 2 of the project, Thurrock Council are unable to provide a robust delivery programme for the full scope of the project. Therefore, it is not currently possible for the board to agree an extension to the project completion date. A request to extend the project completion date will be brought forward for board consideration alongside the updated business case as was originally intended. If the board agree option 2, the SELEP capital programme team will continue to engage regularly with Thurrock Council to seek the requested information at the earliest opportunity. In the meantime, the board will continue to receive regular update reports which focus on the delivery of the project. And just a point in the report on option 2, 2.1.1.3.1. It's been requested that the wording there is tweaked, and we're proposing that the wording should read, allow time for further work to be undertaken on the business case and to allow for a further review to be completed by the independent technical evaluator. Thank you, Chair. I have finished.
Thank you. That was my request to change because it is not, I don't think our process is about agreeing time for further work to be undertaken to strengthen the business case. That's not our role, is whether we're strengthening the business case. Our role is to ask whether the business case is robust and achieves the value. Councillor.
Thank you for that. It's been a tumultuous summer in this project, and there's been some major changes in personnel at Thurrock Council on this project over the last 2 years or so, which hasn't helped. I think now we're in a better position in the last month or so to actually progress this project. As we said in that, there is very towards a freeport and there are areas, there's been a major plan application only a mile away, and this is actually, there's no station there at the moment. The construction on phase 1 was coming forward. The bus turnaround is absolutely critical, and that is within the business right now. There's apologies that it was removed that's about 2 years or so ago. It was inappropriate. We just now get this back on site and get a station now built for the people there and for the new freeports that are coming forward at a pace. The plan vision was given just before the summer. We need to move forward with a plan for phase 1 as soon as possible to get a construction started, and then obviously making sure we deliver exactly what it was intended to individual money. So I'm glad, I would prefer to support today option 2, so it gives that last few months, a few months to come back at the next board meeting and making sure that if it isn't by the mid-board meeting, then we could immediately remove the vote to pay the money back.
Thank you, Simon.
Just to be clear, if we are going for the second option, that we're bringing this to the first board meeting of 23-24, not the next one in November, is that correct?
So yes, we'll continue to bring updates on the
Yeah.
project at each meeting, but the date we've set for bringing forward the last opportunity to bring forward the updated business case will be in the first meeting of 23-24.
I'm assuming we'll still be on the high risk list for every meeting.
Yes.
Yes.
Can I ask a slightly
Yeah.
strange question, which is, given, as you said, the tumultuous time that you've had, are there any greater risks to the project given that situation, or actually is that a greater assurance?
The greatest risk is the contractor, and the protracted phase one contraction, the contractor and his cost implications and network round. And it's that leeway on the phase one. Phase two is slightly better to actually deliver the tangibles, mainly the tangibles. But phase one is the issue of delays, mainly why the construction is around network route and around the contractor's costs inflation, and like anything else in these times, and making sure we get the timescales on that. But phase two, I think we can get a business case that actually, and the case that actually proves the tangibles that was designed for, which is the public bus turnaround and the public access to our employment areas. So I think that the first important tangible is to make sure that there's a contractor on phase one to get that construction started into the station. And then I think the easier one, which is the more worrying one for yourselves, is actually delivering the outcomes that we actually have always envisaged. A public bus turnaround.
Thank you. Okay, so we have a recommendation. We have two options in front of us. We have a request from Councillor Coxall that we consider option 2 first. So I will put that forward as the one that we consider first, about whether you do agree to it. So that is that we agree, despite the submitted business case not providing the required assurances on deliverability and value for money, the 7.5 million LGF funding can be retained against the project in accordance to section section B 3.4 of the SELEP Assurance Framework 2. Now, this is, bear with me whilst I try to make sure that I get the new wording right on this, which is to agree time for further work to be undertaken on the business case and to allow for a further review to be completed by the independent technical evaluator, to allow time for Thurrock Council to address and mitigate the risks to the delivery of the project outlined in this report, and allow time for Thurrock Council to develop their plans for phase 2 of the project, enabling them to confirm that a full funding package is in place to deliver the full scope of the project as set out in the business case. Noting that if these points are not adequately addressed in advance of the first board meeting of 2023-24, the LGF funding will be removed from the project and will need to be returned to Essex County Council as accountable body of SELEP within 4 weeks by Thurrock Council for reallocation to alternative projects. Sorry, that's a long one. So if there are any queries about the wording of that, ask me now, but I am going to put it to the vote. Do you agree?
Very good. Thank you very much, colleagues.
Do you agree that the retention of the LGF funding against the project is subject to Thurrock Council paying for all further work completed by the ITE in relation to the review of the project and the business case? Note that the update on delivery of the project as detailed in this report, and note that the required extension to the completion date for the project will be brought forward for the board consideration once the programme for delivery of phase 2 of the project has been developed. Okay, thank you, Howard. Okay, now we are going on to item 9, which is a report on Queensway Gateway. Richard, thank you for coming. So if you do your report, and then please I'm going to hand over to Helen as well, please. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair, and good morning to the board members. I'm here representing the County Council to provide an update on progress to the board since it last met on the 15th of July and cover any known risks to delivery. For clarity, Sea Change Sussex are the lead delivery body responsible for this project. I will not look to cover everything contained within the report, especially the context and background to the project to date, which is detailed in section 3, as I will take it that you have read the report. We'll draw out substantive points and then take any questions. Before I start, I want to issue a corrective statement relating to the production of the last board paper in July 22, in which it was indicated that staff absences in Sea Change Sussex had hampered the production of the report. This was certainly a key factor, but to clarify, a letter on the Queensway Gateway Road was received a few weeks before the Accountability Board from Sea Change Sussex to East Sussex County Council. However, the contents of which were too late for consideration within the reporting and approval cycles agreed with SELEP for the purposes of that report. As such, it was agreed that the items raised would be covered by the respective parties, and responses have subsequently been made. Moving to the reports, as a short background to the project, fundamentally the Queensway Gateway Road is a road infrastructure project which will see the A21 connection delivering transport improvements and unlocking allocated employment land. The road will connect with Queensway running south of its junction with the Ridge West, crossing the Hollington Stream Valley on an embankment, and then running south of Whitworth Road to join the A21. On the progress within the report, there are two main substantive matters and risks to notify the board, which impact on the overall timelines for the delivery of the project. Firstly, on technical approvals, at this moment, we are unable to provide a complete indicative timeline of the milestones, as conversations on the technical approvals are ongoing, particularly with National Highways, Sea Change Sussex and East Sussex County Council, to formalise the steps to delivering the signalised connection, which is currently the priority focus. The report demonstrates progress made on these fundamental technical approvals being sought as an additional stage 2 road safety audit addendum has been required, which supports the subsequent section 278 legal agreement. It is worth saying that East Sussex County Council, as the local highway authority, is broadly content with what is proposed and subject to Sea Change Sussex providing the final and complete set of plans, drawings and specifications for the works. We do not anticipate any difficulty in confirming our technical approval. The whole audit, I must stress, the whole audit process could take around 4 to 6 weeks, depending on the extent of comments made by the auditor and timely turnaround at each stage throughout. So until these technical approvals are finalised and Sea Change Sussex have the required highways agreements in place with both East Sussex County Council and National Highways to construct the signalised connection, this has clearly an impact on us providing confidence on the delivery of all other indicative milestones and timescales for delivery. Secondly, I'd like to turn to the matter about the project budget. We are unable to provide a detailed update to the board on this occasion, but intend to do so at the next board meeting. Ongoing discussions between Sea Change Sussex and East Sussex County Council continue on the overall funding package to be applied for the delivery of the connection to the A21. This is partly, as we've heard throughout the course of today's conversations, in light of cost pressures applied across the construction industry and to major projects of this nature. However, there is an expectation that the project's capital costs will fall within the remaining £2 million temporary contingency budget for the signalised connection within the overall estimated 12 million funding. Once the technical approvals have been received, the final designs, drawings and specifications will be able to be circulated to let the contract for the works, subject to Sea Change Sussex's own internal approval processes being followed to ensure the terms of the contractual agreements and requirements to award the contract is approved by the Sea Change Sussex Board. It is at this point that the overall budget and commitments will have greater certainty, with the risks clearer to both parties, which will be subject to agreement, enabling the construction, delivery and outcomes of the overall project to proceed. I think also thirdly, it's important to note some of the benefits that have been realised, and the report alludes to that to date, but also overall for the project. And I'd just like to take a moment to reflect on those. Fundamentally, with the employment sites already accessible from the Queensway end of the Gateway Road, the delivery of this connection will maximise the employment benefits already realised through the 90% of the completed road, as well as resolving existing traffic congestion, particularly along the ridge. The benefits of the connection are set out within the original business case and were assessed to deliver 65.5 million of transport economic efficiency benefits, have a benefit cost ratio of 2.7 to 1, based on the assessment of the roundabout undertaken for East Sussex County Council on the scheme and utilised in the business case as an example. As the connections serve the same route and are designed to accommodate similar resilience, the benefits of the two options are comparable. It should, however, be noted that the signalised junction, in addition to having been designed to accommodate traffic flows to a later year than has been modelled for the roundabout solution, would minimise cost and disruption to local businesses. In terms of next steps, an update on the project will be provided at the next board meeting, intending to provide clarity on the progress made on the road safety audit addendum, section 278 legal agreement, and clarity on the funding to be applied to the delivery of projects. Thank you, Chair. I'm very happy to take any additional questions which the board members may wish to raise.
Okay, thank you, Helen.
Thank you. So I just wanted to take the opportunity to reiterate some of the SELEP comments that's set out within the report. There was a clear requirement within the report considered at the last board meeting for a full update on delivery of the project, including consideration of key milestones, risks, budget and benefits to be provided at this meeting. As Richard said, the East Sussex County Council have been unable to provide this update due to ongoing discussions with Sea Change Sussex and uncertainty regarding the delivery programme due to ongoing engagement with National Highways. Given that the project is flagged as high risk, the inability to provide the comprehensive update requested does raise concerns regarding the ongoing deliverability of the project and the timeline for delivery of the signalised connection with the A21. A full update on the project must be provided at the next board meeting. It is noted in the report that additional work in the form of a stage 2 road safety audit addendum is required. The need for this work was not initially anticipated by either East Sussex County Council or Sea Change Sussex, and therefore it is expected this will impact on the delivery programme. In addition, there are a number of outstanding approvals, TROs, and a section 278 agreement which need to be secured or completed before the signalised connection can be constructed and or before the new road can be opened, more fully opened. Any delays in completing any of these work streams will have an impact on the delivery programme or the opening date of the new connection. Progress towards realisation of these approvals will be monitored and updates will be provided at future meetings. Whilst the report does not give a detailed update on the project cost and funding package, reference to the £2 million funding contribution from Sea Change Sussex as temporary contingency funding is a concern, as it was previously understood that this funding was committed to the project. It is imperative that the update report to the November board meeting provides greater assurance regarding the availability and commitment of this funding by Sea Change Sussex. If Sea Change are unable to commit this funding to the project, an alternative approach to bridging any funding gap will need to be identified. If there is a funding gap which cannot be bridged, meaning that the project cannot be delivered in accordance with the business case, the board will be asked to consider whether the 10 million LGF should remain allocated to the project. It is noted within the report that procurement of a construction contractor still needs to be undertaken. This is a concern in light of widely reported cost increases across the LGF and GBF programmes, and does raise concerns with regard to the affordability of the project. The report provides further commentary on the benefits which are expected to be realised as a result of project delivery. Whilst the designated employment sites have now been unlocked, no commercial development has come forward to date, meaning that the timeline for delivering the new jobs will be significantly delayed compared to that set out in the business case. In addition, the transport benefits have not yet been realised, as it's not possible to open the full length of the new road. I think that was all.
Okay, thank you. Thank you both. Any comments from the board at all?
Chairman, just to reiterate what I said last time, the frustration and concerns are still noted. I still think that this is one of the key projects that we, the County Council and the LEP need to deliver. to facilitate traffic moving from 21 to the Queensway. And I believe that once that is completed, the unlocking of the land will be easier. Project. Without that connection, people couldn't have the certainty that they have access to the major trunk road. So we just push on, and the sooner it's open, the better I should be.
Thank you. Okay. I mean, I would, Simon.
Sorry, just one question. So the TRO is supposed to be one of the key technical requirements to get the road open, but won't delay the actual construction. Am I correct?
That's right. Yeah, I didn't cover the TRO because in effect it's not until the road is it's not necessary until the road is actually open.
Okay.
So it's in good progress. I think the report covers that. I just didn't want to take up the time of the board to demonstrate that really successful progress that's been moving on the TRO.
But whilst I know I'm hypothesising here, the reality is, I guess, the next time we receive a report, it's going to be highly likely that that TRO will have gone back to the council because of objections that will probably be placed. Would that be a fair assumption to make? Or
It will go to the intention is that it go to the 14th of December planning committee. So with the board meeting here being on the 25th of November, you're right, we may know if there are any objections. There may not be. There wasn't any objections in informal stakeholder conversations. So that's good. So Barbara obviously is going out to the public.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Thank you both for your updates. I mean, I absolutely remain concerned that we keep a close eye on this project and that we have hopefully much clearer update in November at the next meeting, please. So we asked
so
you.
can I just
Yes.
say, one thing I think that would be extremely helpful would be to find a format for scheduling this, so that the issues and where they stand appear. And I'm beginning to think that the problem with our close eye, to use your terminology, is that we tend to get another Word document description, which doesn't enable us to track the progress. And I've latched onto your point about the TRO, and I can see that there are elements of progress, but it doesn't actually help the council either, because any elements of progress that have been achieved just don't appear. And I think if we are when we say that we're going to keep a close eye, if all that means is it'll come back to the next meeting or the next meeting, that really isn't keeping a close eye. So for me, close eye, I think, means that we need to know exactly what the risks are, and this applies to a number of the projects that are going to come back. And I think if it could be found with a template that tracks the progress or otherwise that there has been on those matters that have been raised, that I think for everyone's benefit.
I think it's a very fair point, but just to give reassurance that I know that our team and the team are meeting weekly. And so there is no lack of understanding short of putting in on a daily call. We are meeting weekly, but for us as board members to have that linking process is very helpful.
Yes.
Yeah.
I think it's, for me, it's part of this accountability point that I raised last time.
As you're aware, previous reports have had the indicative milestones, and they would have identified the tracking of the progress. The key areas that are needing to be resolved, so that we don't report all the subsequent milestones and keep changing them, is ultimately the points that I've just been stressing. One is getting the technical approval sorted out on the road safety audit and the Section 278 legal agreement done, and then now dealing with the funding commitment matter. And obviously everything else then has an impact on those timescales. So that's why the report was written in the way it was on this occasion.
I follow that, but that is to identify what's got to be done. It's not to say what progress has been made onto it. As somebody who's spent a lifetime doing Section 278 in my day job, there's a great difference between we need to do a 278 and we are down to the last minor points in relation to how we're going to get, well, it's with the lawyers for final sign off. And along the way, there are a lot of things. I don't think it helps on this not to know that progress at the next level of detail. And I sympathise with Helen, who just hasn't got that. So where there are discussions, we simply don't see that progress being followed. I think when a scheme gets to high risk, it must be that we have to have clearer, more visible progress on what's happening. If we're still saying next month that we need a section 278, and I know nothing more than that, I can't evaluate the progress on that issue, for example. And it may be, but it can be done by Helen as a generality. I'm sure Helen said that, you know, she's very satisfied that 278 is now ready to be signed off on. None of us would want to know any more about it than that, but I think we've got to find a way of expressing that.
Thank you. Thank you. I think given, as you said, Mr. Gazer, that there's this weekly meeting that I'm sure there must be a way of getting able to agree a kind of template that would be very useful. And actually, as Councillor Wagner has suggested, maybe it's something we should be using for all of the high risk projects from now on in, so that there is a real clarity and visual clarity apart from anything else on some of this. So thank you very much. So we are asked to note the latest update position on the delivery of the project, note the identified risk in relation to the total project budget, and we are asked whether we agree that the board will be provided with a further update on the project, which updates the project delivery plan and associated milestone and provides greater clarity and a template on the total project budget at its meeting on the 25th of November 2022.
Great.
Thank you very much. Okay, item 10, Howard.
Okay, so we've got high risk projects. It's in the high risk project update, and the report provides an update on the delivery of the A13 widening and Grace South projects. Firstly, the A13 widening. As the board are aware, the A13 is now fully open to traffic. However, connections for the street lighting of the eastern extent of the scheme require replacement, or the remaining speed limit reductions can be removed. At the last meeting, it was indicated that these works would be completed by September 2022. However, due to procurement timelines, it is now expected that this work will not be completed until later in October this year. It was reported in February 2022 that other non-highway works would be completed in the summer of 2022. However, this has slipped into autumn 2022, predominantly due to the ongoing balancing pole works mentioned last time, and the need to replace the connections for the street lighting mentioned above. As detailed in the report, an update on total project spend to date was not received from Borough Council in time for inclusion in this report. However, it is noted that spend reported to the end of May 2022 exceeds the forecast total project cost reported to the board via a confidential appendix in September of 2021. An updated forecast total project cost was requested from Thurrock, but was not provided in advance of this meeting, certainly on time of this meeting. An update on both the spend to date and the forecast total project costs must be provided at the November board meeting alongside an update on project delivery. On to Grace South. At the last meeting, the board were advised that determination of the two planning applications for the project was expected in August. However, as set out in the report, queries and holding objections received in relation to the planning applications have taken longer than anticipated to resolve, and as a result, expected determination was delayed until September. That was planning committee was last night. Unfortunately, it was confirmed that it didn't quite make the September meeting, and it is now expected that the planning applications will be determined in October. And they're also told that a lot of the issues that have been raised have now been resolved. In fact, I believe all of them have been resolved. So hopefully it should be okay. As the project enhances the rail network through the removal of the existing level crossing, it is subject to the Governance for Railway Investment Projects GRIP process. It was reported that contracts for the completion of GRIP stages 4 and 5, single option development and detailed design, will be completed in late July 2022. This was not achievable, but the required documentation has now been agreed by Network Rail, and it is currently progressing through the Thurrock Council sign-off process. The latest update on that is now gone through the Assistant Director. It's now with Thurrock Council Finance for their sign-off before it then goes on to Thurrock Council Legal for sealing. The delivery programme remains broadly in line with that reported at the last meeting, although the completion of the stage 4 process has been delayed due to the ongoing work to ensure that the that the required contracts are in place. Project completion is still expected in November 2024. However, if a CPO is required, the programme will be extended by 18 to 21 months. A further update which outlines the latest position on the planning application is land acquisition and grid stage 4 work will be provided at the November meeting. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Any comments or queries? Councillor Coxon.
Yes, it's the A13. Hopefully, we're nearly near the end of the A13. It's been as long as I've been a member of the board. It's been on this list. Hopefully, we're close to that. So I think the A13 is running, as it says, very well. It's just a few items to finish off, and obviously, hopefully, they'll off the high risk list shortly. I'm quite pleased with the what's happened with the Grays Underpass. It seems to have moved on at a pace over the summer. And we'll hopefully play an application, the standard objections subject to network rail, as we all know, sometimes can be difficult to get through their processes. But essentially, I'm hoping we don't have a CPO. The only time up until 9 days of the CPO process with the land assembly, there is one or two land plots that we need to actually make sure. I'm hoping that we can get before the CPO process, just to allow you. We have already gone through cabinet with the beginnings of the CPO, just so we can move this forward. Last year, so we're in the council. It should be much easier to move forward if we need. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Okay, so we're asked on the A13 to note the update on the project and note that a further update will be brought to the November 2022 board meeting, which must provide confirmation of the total spend to date and an updated forecast total project cost. And indeed, maybe a template, as we talked about earlier on.
Not pointless.
Okay, hopefully it's all done.
Yes, it's all done.
Hopefully it will be that one. Grace, but if it isn't, Grace, note the update on the project and note that a further update will be brought to the November 2022. Thank you. Okay, item 11, Growing Places Fund Programme Update. Helen.
Thank you. So this report provides the usual update on the Growing Places Fund programme, including an update on project delivery and risks which are impacting the programme. As indicated at the last meeting, we are currently undertaking a full review of the forecast benefits and outcomes stated in original funding applications and how these benefits are being reported to the board. It was hoped that the review would be completed in this meeting. Due to capacity issues, the review is ongoing, and therefore the report does not include the usual update on benefits realised as a result of the GPF investment. The report contains a further update on the Eastbourne Fisherman's Quayside and Infrastructure Development Project. As the board are aware, the project was unable to make the full 0.25 million repayment due in March 2022 and has therefore defaulted on their agreed repayment schedule. As set out in the report, it was expected that a revised repayment schedule would be brought forward for full consideration at this meeting. Whilst the Eastbourne Fisherman's under 10 metre community interest company have been taking steps to develop a robust revised repayment schedule, further time is required to ensure that full due diligence can be completed by East Sussex County Council. As a result, the revised repayment schedule is not set out in this report. It is now expected that the revised repayment schedule will be brought forward for board consideration in November. This repayment schedule will also need to be considered by the strategic board in December due to the number of changes to the repayment schedule which have previously been agreed by the board. In the meantime, the board should be aware of the ongoing risk of non-repayment of the balance of the loan.
Okay, thank you. Any comments or queries?
Reassurance if you need it, that the work is ongoing. Hopefully you'll have it ready for the next one.
Thank you. That's good to have. So we're asked to note the updated position on the GPF programme and note that the expected revised repayment schedule proposal for Eastbourne Fisherman's Quayside and Infrastructure Development Project will now not be forthcoming until the November 2022 Accountability Board meeting, as additional time is needed for East Sussex County Council to undertake all required due diligence on the proposed revised repayment mechanism and schedule. Thank you very much. Okay, Lorna, finance update.
Thank you. Good morning. So the finance update provides the latest update with respect to the SELEP revenue budget and the reserves position in the current financial year. Forecast indicates an anticipated net spend from the operation reserve of 524,000. This is an overspend of 28,000 when compared to the latest budget position. This is primarily due to higher than budgeted legal support costs and higher than anticipated staffing costs. But we'll look to find opportunities to offset and mitigate this this small pressure as we progress through the year. But in the interim, we're proposing to manage this through an additional drawdown from the operational reserves. The forecast reflects the assumptions that have been agreed with Adam and as the CEO for the LEP with respect to each of the cost lines and the anticipated grants and other income that remains and other income that's anticipated. There does remain some risk with respect to some of the income and grants that have yet to be confirmed, but the main risk that we had with respect to core funding has now been mitigated as we received that back in August. The board will recall that the core funding that was allocated for this year is only 375,000 compared to the 500,000 we've had in previous years. And as yet, there still remains no assurance for additional funding beyond the current year. So we're therefore continuing to review carefully the reserves position held by the LEP to help ensure that future and ongoing commitments are mitigated, particularly with respect to kind of the grant programs and the contractual risks that and commitments we've got in place. One of the key challenges remains balancing the ongoing ambitions of the LEP with the funding and resources that are available to meet that ambition. The lack of assurance with respect to future funding will continue to make planning for future activity difficult. And for the next meeting of the board, we will intend to bring forward the budget for next year. This will be aligned with discussions with Adam alongside the development that he and his team are doing for the delivery plan for next year. And we'll continue to look at opportunities that we can to maximise use of our funding that's available to deliver what we can and ensuring that we remain within the reserves that are available. I wasn't going to say any more, but if there's any questions, happy to take them.
Thank you very much, Lynn. Are there any questions or comments? I guess I'd like to put on record one or two really, which is one, firstly, to thank staff for all of the work that they're doing on this incredibly uncertain time, and you know, the accountable body as well for all the support that you are giving us. Thank you, Essex County Council. You know, I have to say it's no way to run a business with this uncertainty. It's not what I would wish us to be in the position of. And if there is anything we can do to try and encourage government to be clear about the future of the LEPs, I would be very, very grateful, and about the future of our funding, but they're relatively clear about the future of LEPs, but the future of our funding for the next year. There are incredible amount of things, as you can see from today's meeting, that on which we have to report, and that I think we owe the public, you know, a duty of care to report very carefully on these issues. So, you know, I just wanted to put that on record. Okay, thank you. So we're asked whether we approve the updated 2022-23 SELEP revenue forecast budget set out in Table 1, including the specific funds summarised in Table 3. Do you approve it?
Agreed.
And note the ongoing uncertainty from government regarding the future funding position for the LEP beyond 2022-23. Okay, Adam, I'm handing over to you now for the operations update.
Thank you very much. I won't talk for too long on this. I'm conscious I spoke at you for 25 minutes earlier. Obviously, this report serves to note an update on the Insurance Framework Compliance Monitoring, which is available in Appendixes B and C, and also note changes to the risk register, which is out there in Appendix D. I mean, I just wanted to raise 5 specific points, really, some of which you were just getting towards there, Sarah. So the report indicates that 375,000 core funding for this financial year is in, which obviously was welcomed, but it produces a a really tight budget, and one where I'm kind of reviewing all expenditure of any value because of the impact that it has and the impact that it would have on future staffing as well. So it really couldn't be tighter. One of the situations we're in at the moment is, with increased legal costs relating to some of the discussions that we've had already, which have more or less quadrupled from what was budgeted for. That has a direct impact on staffing and how we can execute the stuff that we want to do around strategic economic growth and supporting business. So it's very real. It's quite frustrating, but it's managed carefully, and I'm grateful to Lorna in particular for helping me through that, because it's really quite difficult. And we hope that we can keep the show on the road for the next 18 months. And then get towards, what needs to come next in response to the Levelling Up white paper and everything there. But to make a good fist of that and for everything to align well, we've just got to be involved in the conversations around devolution and what comes next. And that needs to sort of start as soon as possible, because there's an awful lot that we can offer from an expertise perspective, but also from things that we hold, all the data and everything else. It's got to be a feature of what comes next, and I think that's a really important conversation to have, and will certainly help in terms of helping us as a team kind of appreciate that we're part of a meaningful ongoing picture, really. The second thing I was going to mention was just to bring out, it's mentioned in the report, but just to let you know that the recruitment process for the new chair is underway. All the things that we have to sort of put in place really to sort of move that forward, we have. Just to give you that reassurance, we were due to have a meeting with the panel this Monday, but obviously this Monday being a bank holiday changed things a little bit, and we're just trying to get a new one in the diary. But I'm satisfied that we're pushing that forward behind the scenes, and that will kind of go to the timeline originally identified. So that's all happening. Also, to highlight as a third point, that we do still have the requirement from government to have a gender balance on the SELEP strategic board by January 2023. Again, that's highlighted in the ops report. That is something that we need to urgently address. We'll be talking about it at length at the upcoming strategic board meeting, but it's just, I just wanted to mention it now and draw it out and put some emphasis on it, because we need to make sure that whatever happens in terms of the medium long term of how the economic growth body of work is supported, and how long left we have with the LEP in this form, it's absolutely something that we need to step up to in the short term. So we need to put those measures in place to make sure that we do. The fourth point, just on the and Sarah, you touched on this earlier too, around the risks, the kind of well-being in the team, and I suppose part of that, it relates to workload. Part of that relates to what comes next. And just to give you some reassurance, board, that in terms of providing a degree of job security in the short term, doing absolutely everything to provide that. I think we maintain also a really positive working environment. We've retained most of the team too, which I think is fantastic. We've obviously lost some really important people over the course of the last 12 months or so, but the rest of the team is in place, and we continue to do a good job. So managing those concerns is a daily job for me, and I think people are generally in an okay place when it comes to that workload piece and what we can manage as a smaller team. We've just got to accept that there are fewer things that we can do, and there'll be one or two things that either take longer or we just can't do. But we're doing everything we can to make sure that we stay on top of as much as we possibly can. I won't talk about the risk of non-achievement of outcomes on the capital programme, because I think it's been well covered in the earlier conversation. Some of those measures and mitigations that we need to put in place, I think, have been well discussed, but we're very conscious of it. It's not unusual, obviously, to get towards the end of a capital programme, funding programme, and really have to sort of look more closely at where projects are and make appropriate modifications and changes, and I think we'll see a lot of that, a lot of hard thinking that's gone into that as we do those getting building fund reallocations that are coming forward at the strategic board in a few weeks' time. So again, that's something that's been well marshalled, but we're very aware of the risk, and some of those, well, you know, most of those issues that have been caused are well understood. Yeah, the sort of impact of the rising cost of materials and formerly of COVID and everything else obviously has had a very manifest impact on the programme. Final point, strictly speaking, not caught within the realms of the paper, but something I wanted to say anyway, is just to pay tribute to a couple of people for all the work that goes into these meetings. I know we always say it, but it's been particularly difficult this time for various different factors, not least losing a few people. But the work that Helen does meeting to meeting is absolutely exemplary. That's got to be made clear. The work that Lorna has done, particularly with the lack of Amy with her now in the accountable body, is just amazing. And everybody else has been involved. It's a great effort, and it's really humbling to be part of that picture. And also to Amy for being unflappable in sorting out the technological problems we've had today. This has come across really strongly online, and obviously that's got a lot to do with her quick thinking. So thanks there. That was it, Sarah. Happy to take any questions. I don't want to sort of sit here and be negative about the situation that we're in. I think we've seen it coming for a long period of time. We're just doing our best to manage it positively, really.
Thank you, Azam. And actually, what we should also do is pay tribute to you as the Chief Executive for steering the ship so carefully and well. So thank you. Thank you to the team as well. Okay, so are there any other comments or queries? Okay, we're asked to note the update on the assurance framework, compliance monitoring and the governance KPIs at appendices B and C, and note the changes to the risk register at appendix D. Okay, so that's just, we have no urgent business or no urgent exempt business. The date of the next meeting is the 25th of November, and the venue is to be confirmed. Thank you all very much. Thank you.